The following episode of the Carnival of Randomness is sponsored by an important message to you, the people, from Upsitnik and Associates. Every day there are forces that are taking from you, stealing from you. Your money, your time, your freedom. Immense faceless corporations, banks, credit card companies, insurance providers, government agencies, this list goes on and on. When you are under attack and facing crisis, turn to us, Upsitnik and Associates, attorneys for you, the people. When every day becomes a battle, we can advise and assist. We have been advocates for 40 years. Email us through upsitnikslaw.com or call us at 1-866-391-3299 or reach out to us through Upsitnik and Associates on Facebook for a prompt, no obligation communication and consultation. Don't be pushed around.
Hi, hello everybody, ladies, gents, whomever, children, clowns, whomever's out there for another episode of Carnival of Randomness. There's Zach.
Hello.
And Zach, I was trying to drum up a good episode for this week.
Oh.
And I couldn't think of what to do. I thought drumstick, chicken drums. What the hell? Why don't we have some drummers on? Talking drumming.
Well, now that we have some drummers on, we could do the old
and
rim shot.
I don't understand. Rob's
joke.
not here. He was supposed to be here, but who knows what happens with Bauman and those guys. Yeah. But we do have Dave.
That's me.
And we have Greg.
Hi, rumpa-pum-pum.
If you want to talk about it, tell people about your drumming, I guess. Unless you want to talk about something else. But
well, I don't
go ahead, Greg.
Well,
you're in line. You're in the line here.
I seem to recall banging on the womb. No, I don't know. Go ahead.
Well, I'm not sure what you're asking. You want?
Well, just tell a little about yourself. That's all.
Oh, okay. Well, I started playing drums as a child. You know, like a lot of us who start playing instruments in a school band program. And you learn your rudiments and all that stuff. You learn to read maybe, and you start playing in concert band, and it kind of went from there.
The one thing for Primetime Funk, though, it is a bit of misnomer, because don't you guys do gigs later at night or earlier in the evening too, besides Primetime?
Oh, everybody in the band plays with a bunch of other bands.
Oh, okay.
There's not enough rim shots available in the universe for this show.
Yeah, we've got to do plenty of rim shots on this one. And Greg, what have you been playing with lately? And that sounded horrible the way I said it.
Well, damn, I only had a little bit of time on probation left.
Whoops.
Brian Lindsay Band. We just got done playing at Marge's and got something coming up at Iron Smoke. And Susie Willpower, Anonymous Willpower, playing with them at let's see, we're going to be at Three Heads Brewery on the 30th of August, and then we got this thing earlier this month. We're going to be in Hannibal, New York, doing some kind of a Woodstock.
Oh, there! I've heard of this because
Joplin
McPhail is playing out there. I've heard of that now. That there's a big thing out there.
Yeah, so we're going to do like a Janis Joplin set mixed with some of the originals. So
that could be cool.
One of the things, one analogy I've done with this is I've heard, like, if you go into baseball, they tell you if you really want to make it to the majors, your best shot's to be a catcher. And I always look at drums. I hear people complain all the time, there's 1,000 guitarists out there, any good drummers. Is that really a good way just to sort of get into bands and everything and playing? Because there's sort of a need for you guys.
to play drums, you mean?
Well,
I wouldn't say. I think if you really want to play music, in terms of what's needed and what there seems to be shortages of, I would say bass players, in my opinion.
That's true. Cause you really think about it, what does the bass player do much these days? Back in the old days, but now it's like the old cartoon Metalocalypse. It's like, we need him. He's the bass player. Granted, we auto-tune it so you can't hear anything that he does, but damn it, he's necessary.
I get a lot of people ask me a lot for bass players.
They do.
And keyboard players.
Well, I know, like, a lot of, in terms of, like, the old funk things, like Cameo, Parliament, all those had the real grungy bass, and a lot of actually metal bands even took from there because the bass was such a focus point.
Right, but I think in general, it's probably not as glamorous as being a guitarist or a lead singer,
right,
or even a drummer. You're sort of, you're holding up the bottom end of the band, but they're very important. And if you're a bass player who can sing and if you can read, you'll always work.
Right.
Well, like Tony Levin's been on over 500 albums, I think.
Yeah.
Actually, speaking of the reading music thing, prepping for the show, I actually asked my dad, who was a musician back in the before time, I guess in the 70s. And he was a bass player, ironically enough. He said, how important, because he actually could not read music, how important do you think it is to be able to read music as a drummer?
Well, I think it's as important as you want to make it. In other words, there's thousands, probably millions of musicians in general who are incredible who don't read a note. I'm always surprised to find out, some of my favorite musicians. I found out a few years ago the great jazz pianist Monte Alexander does not read.
Huh.
Buddy Rich didn't read. But, he was a freak of nature. He had sort
Right.
of a photographic memory, but when it came to auditory stuff. So he could hear an arrangement once.
It's kind of odd to
and be able
hear
to play it.
hear
But if
that a
you
pianist
can
can't
read,
music.
I tell my students all the time, you should learn to read because it's just one other tool you're going to have over somebody else. If you don't have to learn to read, but if you're not going to learn to read, you really have to develop your ears, your ability to listen and retain material. Which I think when I was younger was much easier to do than it is now, which is why I have so many charts.
Incredible things where Mozart, I guess, could just hear it once in his head and just.
Right.
Well, you talk about the original musical freak of nature. It was Mozart, and I guess you could, in the more modern times, you could throw Prince in there for that.
Yeah. It depends on what you want to do. I know, Dave does a lot of commercial work, jingles and stuff like that. You gotta read for that because somebody's writing these things out, and you gotta bang them out. Or session
but even
work
on those
and
kind of
stuff like
sessions, though, it's not you're not really reading drum music
Right.
on those kind of sessions. It's not like somebody handing you a very explicit chart with tons of notation on it.
It's just like a roadmap
It's
thing.
really more of a lead sheet roadmap, exactly.
Yeah.
But just being able to deal with that, is very important for all musicians. Obviously, learning song form. Those
Right.
kinds of things, and if you have an ability to read, then you'll be able to write. Yeah. I ask my students a lot of times who don't, so if I talk to them about reading and they want to read, I say, well, why do you want to be illiterate?
Right.
Music is a language.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
And if you can't read and write it, then it doesn't mean you can't communicate.
It just means you can't communicate as well.
But it's just another tool you'll have that maybe will help you get a gig over somebody else.
Even the drum magazines now, they always have transcriptions, and if you can read the stuff, then you're not going to sit. You don't have to listen to the record as much. Yeah. You can just go back
Wait
and
a second.
look at these things.
It's Rob.
Yay!
Hey, Rob Mount, ladies and
The
gentlemen.
story I heard is you were on your way, and we thought about talking about your band, your famous band, and Jeff Bauman kidnapped you so you couldn't play.
Oh, yeah.
So we're not going to talk about the most famous band you're in, but why don't you tell everybody knows Rob, but tell them about yourself a little.
Wow, I got to do
Yeah,
that right.
basically, I just sits in and
Yes.
it's like it's the third degree.
I haven't even opened my water
Well,
yet.
Senator,
I did not. Wait.
Yeah, I did not. Well, I don't know.
You're drumming. Your career and stuff, a little bit what you've done, everything else.
Well, the thing that I did of any note would be playing with Lou Gramm for the last 3 years, up until the end of last year. And, I've just been playing since I was, 6, 7 years old. So
How did you get into it? Like you were talking about, they were sort of born with drums in their hands.
Yeah. Well, that's it, because nobody in my family ever really played music, so... Oh, we're taking a picture. Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
So my mom always used to play like Osmond records all the time. The Osmonds. And so like probably all you guys, you just start beating on stuff. You don't really realize what you're doing.
Yeah, we beat on stuff in high school. It wasn't drums though.
Yeah.
Those poor kids.
I wonder if that was the Wrecking Crew on those albums.
So that's like the short end of it.
I mean, you've been playing though since I remember high school and everything and all the way on. You never stopped.
No, I've been playing since I was like 6 or 7. So I'm 51. So do the math. 46.
Yeah, I started late, comparatively, 11 or so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's still young though.
Yeah.
That's
How is that in terms of teaching? Is it better to learn younger? Can you pick it up when you're older?
Well, I think the earlier the start, the better off you're going to be. Although, there's something to be said for, you have to be able to focus for, at least a brief period of time, like a half an hour. So, everybody's different. Everybody learns differently. That's the thing you find out the more that you teach.
Right.
Some people are very, just by listening. Some people it's visual. Mm-hmm. So it's just a matter of finding, which way works best for that particular student. And, of course, a lot of regular types of education aren't set up that way.
Yeah. Well, and I would agree with that, and also add that, you know, if there's talent there, it doesn't matter what age you start at.
Right.
I mean, it can help if you start out earlier, but
Sure.
somebody with natural talent can ramp up really quick in a short period of time if it's there.
Right.
And somebody could be playing for 50 years and never get anywhere.
Right.
You know, just because you've been playing a long time doesn't necessarily mean
Right.
you're
Right.
that good.
Right.
But
I remember I had a kid. I taught one kid. He had autism a little bit, and he would do everything I would tell him. The next week he'd come back with exactly the thing I gave him to do, but he'd always go, "Oh, and I thought of this one thing," and then he'd play the one thing, and I'd be like, "Great, great, okay." I'm thinking, okay, he's creating, he's working off what I'm giving him, so his synapses are going, you know, and you know, we did the lessons for a while, and then after I didn't see him after a while, after I didn't work at the store anymore and stuff. He called me one day out of the blue a couple years later. Not sure how he knew how to get a hold of me, but he goes, "Oh, I'm in a band now. I'm playing and blah, blah, blah. And thanks a lot." And, you know, I was like, holy,
great.
that was
good.
a real, you know, one of those teaching
Yeah.
moments,
Yeah.
you know.
It's actually a quota like I'm going to read. You can just give me your thoughts on it. It's brief. But I just like this quote, and being a non-musician, and it's feeling is a lot more important than technique. It's all very well playing a triple paradiddle, but who's going to know you're doing it? It's a quote by John Bonham. Well, it's
there's the man right there.
Yeah.
And we're all looking at his stuff 50 years later and trying to figure it out.
How do you do
So, I
that
don't
with one
know.
foot?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, do you ever see, speaking of that, have you ever like heard somebody perform some performer and just go, how the hell did he do that?
Oh, all the time.
Tons of
Yeah,
all the time.
yeah.
Anybody in particular?
I mean,
Like,
sometimes it's why did they do that, but,
Right.
but you know, generally, yeah. I mean, that happens all the time. But getting back to your original question, I mean, feel. I mean, to me, wins out over everything.
yeah.
I mean, our job is, you know, is in my estimation, is to make people want to dance, or at least make them want to move in their seat. I don't care what you're playing.
Yeah.
You got to be affecting something, you know, in them. And if you can't do that, all the technique in the world's not going to help you. I mean, there's tons of great musicians with incredible technique, guys that can play, you know, 11 notes over one beat or whatever, but they don't have any feel.
I look out all the time when I'm playing. If I just see anybody just bobbing around, I'm happy.
Then you know you're doing your
The bass
job.
player and I we're making it
as long
happen.
as he doesn't have to go to the bathroom, he's trying to hold it in. you
Right,
know?
right.
Well, at our advanced age, that can be problematic. On those
It depends on the
2
type
hour
of
shows.
music too. Like
Right.
there is specific technical music out there that's meant to be played that way,
Right.
And it's good for that. But you know, I'll just use Lou Gramm as an example. My job is to play for the song, and same thing when you guys do your gig. Anybody who does a gig with popular music, it's popular music. Nobody wants to hear you show off and show every
Right.
chop you've got. Your job is to play for the song, and that's it. You know, and to do it well and have that groove, like you said, and that's it. Because you know you'll lose a gig quicker than you can bat an eye if you're out there trying to
Right.
show off on a gig that is inappropriate.
I know a lot of guys that do that too. They practice while they're playing, and you can't do that. You know, you just can't.
Well, Keith Moon said the benefit of being a drummer is when they start throwing crap on stage at you, you have stuff to deflect it.
That's why it's a
He said,
drum.
he
Is
said
that why he started throwing the drums at the
He
audience?
said Dalty would spin the mic. He deflected a cabbage my way, and I got it with the cymbal.
Did you ever hear that story? Ringo put his cymbals up because they thought they were going to have problems at this one place, so he put the cymbals up. Yeah, it's in some of the stories he tells. He put the cymbals up because he thought they were going to have throw crap on the stage.
Well, we're at a disadvantage. We were sitting in one spot. We can't
That's
run out
right.
of the way.
Right.
Yeah. No, we're a stationary.
Have you ever had anything silly like that happen to you at gigs? Like anything that's really gone wrong or weird or
Well, I
odd?
one
Like
time
that?
playing an outdoor gig in Buffalo where it was like on like a beach type front, and somebody took like one of those plastic ketchup bottles, filled with ketchup, but the lid was like barely on. Threw it at the stage.
Oh, no.
I think it hit my floor tom, and it was like ketchup. That's the only time that I can.
Would you like fries with that?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, at least give me some food. To go.
Yeah, that's how you yell out, throw a hot dog next.
Yeah, right.
Now that happened. Remember, I told that story the last thing when I was talking to you guys about the fish hook. I was playing at what was it down in Sodas Point there, Papa Joe's. I was on the flatbed. Next to it is that bait shop. There's an alleyway. Guy came through with his stuff, with his family and stuff. His fish hook hooked on the back of my shirt. Oh, no. And as I was playing, and I'm getting jerked back, and and I'm like, what the? I like poltergeist thing or something. What the hell is happening here?
Oh my God.
And then the guy said, hey, and then the guy was,
Oh, that's hilarious.
he bought me a shirt after it.
That's the least you can do.
You probably always have the one person in the audience yelling
is a
at you
funny
to play
story.
Freebird.
Well, to be fair, at least it got your shirt and not your ears.
That's right. Yeah, I'm glad it wasn't like, Good point.
Yeah.
Nose or something.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
There goes my earlobe. That's why this earlobe is so long.
Yeah. Rob, what about you? What did you have?
I don't have anything like that with people throwing shit out there. I could talk to
You
you for
might be
hours
the only
about
Plays
drummer in
better
history.
gigs than
That's
us.
right.
apparently. Yeah.
I got stories about stuff going wrong until the cows
Oh,
come
yeah.
home.
Oh,
but,
He
let's
has-
go. Let's
he
something.
has
What's
big
gone
guys that
wrong?
guard
What's
him.
something big that's gone wrong? Unfortunately, those spinal tap
Spinal
moments.
tap moment.
that happens all the time, dude. I'll tell you, since I didn't have a story for that, I'll just give you an example that's happened twice with me playing with Lou. So we all use in-ear monitors playing with Lou because I play to a click track all the time. So, your in-ears are your life when
Right.
you're a drummer in that instance. So a couple of times I'll be up there and playing along, and somehow I managed to unplug myself from my wireless pack.
You're in the ozone.
So I can't hear a thing because first of all, these become earplugs at that point.
Right.
Instead of being speakers, they're earplugs, and the stage volume is so low with us in that band. And and so try to play to a click track without the click track. It became
Wow.
and so I'm sitting there playing along. All of a sudden, it disappears. The first time it happened, I had no idea. I just thought everything went down, but I don't see anybody else reacting. So I'm like, must be me. So I'm trying to get somebody's attention. Stage guy, get over. I'm like, then I realize I'm holding up the cord like this while I'm playing. I'm unplugged, and that happened to me twice. It wasn't fun, but in a little shameless promotion, both times it happened, when they plugged me back in, I was still right on.
Well, good. Then
But,
you're doing your job.
That's a disaster. It wasn't fun.
I always try to play a little game with myself too. Like if I'm listening to the radio, I'll sing along with the tune. I'll walk away and keep singing,
Yeah.
and then I'll come back and see if I'm in the same spot.
Yeah.
And usually I am. So.
Yeah. That's awesome.
But Ringo had another story too. When he couldn't hear, he used to watch the other guys, like butts move or whatever, because to see what groove or where the time was, because he couldn't hear.
Couldn't hear anything.
Thoughts on Ringo? Because everybody picks on poor Ringo.
Yeah.
Underrated, overrated, good, bad.
Creative.
I like him myself.
He's definitely unique.
Good is such a widely used word because there's technically good, there's creatively good, there's style. You create your own style, so you're good.
Right.
A lot of people associate good with being able to run rings around somebody else and do physical gymnastics, and that's one part of being good. And that's not Ringo at all.
No.
He's not that. But he was so creative and he thought outside the box, and nobody played like him.
No.
So because he had his own thing that nobody can recreate, he's great in that aspect.
Right.
Absolutely.
I mean, I feel fine. He's got playing like a mambo groove or something. The bell and the, it's like nobody played that in pop music, but they had so many influences.
Just everybody picks on
But
poor Ringo.
that's another thing too, though. I think when drummers, if you listen to a lot of music, you learn a lot of different percussion styles, and then you incorporate those, and then every now and then, you find some place to fit a really cool thing. It doesn't have to be hard. It's just it's just your thinking process. Exactly. Like they always say, math and music go together, and I was never the greatest math person, so I don't know. But
well, it's just you're a sum of your influences, and what I always try to tell people is it's great to listen to Bonham, it's great to listen to Ringo, it's great to listen to all these guys, it's great to copy some of their stuff so you learn the vocabulary, but then you have to take that and turn it into your own thing.
Exactly.
Because if you just end up being a clone of whoever, you're never going to top the original guy anyways.
Right.
I'm never going to be a better Steve Gadd than he already is. So I can learn some stuff from him and all the other guys and create my own soup.
Right.
But so many people are so bent on being clones and trying to learn this guy note for note and that guy note for note, which is good to a certain extent. But then you got to be yourself.
Maybe it's like Ray Bradbury said about writing. Well, if you take my style, take a style of an author you like, but then get to your own.
Right.
From there.
right. Well, yeah, one size doesn't fit all. You know, you're not going to be able to play a country gig knowing, you know, a lot of bottom licks, you know, or something like that. You know, it's got to fit.
Oh.
You have to understand song form, like you were saying,
and you also
and what
you
works.
have to listen to each genre. You know, I mean, I often tell my students that, you know, a lot of times we have to be like chameleons.
Yep.
You know, depending on who you're playing with,
Right.
or like a character actor.
Yeah.
You know, they work all the time. You know, they don't get the big money
Right.
like the big, you know, headline stars, but they can't make movies without those people. So the more versatile you can be, but you can't be versatile unless you listen to those styles
Exactly.
and not just listening to the drums, but of course listening to how the drums interact with the other instruments, because it's different, you know, in sometimes in different styles.
Tuning styles.
That
all
brings
that
up
stuff.
a question too in terms of styles. Have you ever been called on and like somebody's called, "Hey, can you play with us for some gig that's really not your style," and you had to really adapt to it?
Ooh, good question.
I don't remember that myself, but
Well, you're good in every style.
no, I'm not that great in every style. But I'll tell you, man, you'd be surprised at some people that are name guys that turn down gigs or recommend other people because it ain't their bag. I mean, Jeff Porcaro's turned down gigs. I remember reading him turning down a gig. He said, "Dude, it's just not me." You know, I mean, Jeff Porcaro turning down a gig.
Right.
Say somebody said to you, "Hey, I got a ska band. We need a drummer. Would you want to play ska or something like that?"
I'll give it a go if they're up for experimentation.
Right. That's a good question, though. I mean, like, I could never play, like, really hardcore, you know, King Crimson or something like that. I mean, or really super, I mean, I can play cocktail jazz, but I can't play, like, really crazy jazz, you know. So.
I mean, for me, it's whatever you're called upon to do. I mean, I hope I have enough prep time to actually sit down with it and be able to do it in an
You know what
authentic
it's
way,
like? Most of the
know?
time, it's like, "Hey, 5 minutes from now, we got a gig or a drummer
Oh,
threw
yeah.
up. You just come
Well,
out."
you know,
That is
the
what
guy
it
did
is.
that with the Who one time. I know that.
Oh, yeah.
I love that. That's the scene. Anybody doesn't know they were playing. It was late '70s.
San
Keith
Francisco?
Moon was wasted as usual.
No.
They noticed when they're playing the drum beat slows.
passed out.
He passed out. It's online. And Pete Townsend comes out and goes, "Can anybody play the drums?" And they brought people up.
Wow.
Knew the tunes and
Yeah.
played the rest of the show, I guess.
It never happens to me.
The
What,
first,
passing out or getting...
No, getting asked to do something like that.
the first gig I did with Lou was a sub gig for his brother in 2009, and it was on 3 days' notice. And the good thing was, I had been in a Foreigner tribute band with Lou's nephew
Oh.
There you
years
go.
before, and I knew
So you
almost
all
every
the-
song.
yeah.
So it's just like, okay, I
Yeah.
can do it
You know
because
the
I know
tunes.
it.
Well, that's
Yeah.
good.
But it worked out that way. But then, you know, what's interesting is Kenny Aronoff. I got to meet him once when we were out in Los Angeles, and I was talking to him. And he's so busy and he does so much work. But the reason he can do it is because A, he's a great drummer and he's very versatile. But B, he charts everything.
Right.
I was just
And he
gonna
goes, "There's
say.
no way I could remember all
Yeah,
this stuff.
Exactly.
I can't." And so if I could chart it out, I can do anything, which is genius. That's how he stays busy.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, you were going back to the reading music. I mean, even if you understand the notation and you can make your own notes, like I've had to do that a few times. Like I've had to make my own notes for grooves and put my own little, you know, where the breaks are and this and that. I mean, it's you don't need to read per se like a huge chart, but if you can make your own charts and learn, you know, write your bass drum hits and your snare hits and put them in the right place on the staff or whatever.
As long as you can figure it out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but it's
it-
good to know the language.
Right, and a lot
you
of it, like it's about form. It's about knowing what the groove is, where the breaks are. It's not like trying to read a transcription of
Right.
something.
Right.
You know, but having that ability, like you said, you got a gig you got to prepare for, and you have a very short period of time. I don't think I could do it without, you know, making some charts.
Yeah.
You know.
You kind of have to, depending on the situation, how much time you have. Like
Right.
you said, my only beef with any of this reading stuff and charts is I've seen guys that will go up with a chart in order to play a Led Zeppelin song, and then I got a problem. It's like, dude, you need a chart to go play Zeppelin? I mean,
Yeah.
you should know this stuff. You know what I mean? There's guys that use it as crutches, and then there's guys that really need to have it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I mean-
If you're using it as a crutch, bad. If you're using it because you have to,
A lot of this stuff's osmosis. You've been hearing it forever. You know,
Well, that's a good
It's
question.
in your head.
Because I've heard a lot, and we've had some news like in the local papers recently about a lot more tribute shows here. I know a lot of my friends, like Alan Murphy, has had a residence. They've done Doors.
Right.
My friend Carl, they've done Ween shows every year. We have more of these. You've played, obviously, in bands like these. When you're playing and you think, like, okay, this drummer's, how am I going to do this justice? You take it, you try to try to get note for note? Do you try to bring a little of your own in, or?
I've never done one of those, so I'm not the
haven't
guy
either.
to ask.
Rob is.
I have.
Well, in that case,
Speak to the choir, Rob.
The choir. Well, it kind of goes back to what I said about playing for the song. You know, your job in that instance is to sort of recreate as close as possible the listening experience that people expect. Right. They want to hear what's familiar. They don't care how good of a drummer, how good a technical, any instrument, guitar, bass, doesn't matter. Now, that being said, you still need a little bit of leeway, depending on what music it is, to be yourself somewhat. Because you have to, if a certain spot or a certain song allows it, then it's okay to do it. You know what I mean? But for the most part, you gotta, if you're doing a tribute act, especially if you're a tribute act, you gotta sound like the guy you're playing.
Like, what about intros and like if there's a specific drum intro and a specific drum break, do you cop it?
Absolutely.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, nothing drove me crazier than hearing, like, I mean, I'm talking about name bands. I mean, I'm not going to name the band, and they're a great band, don't get me wrong, but they were doing a cover of rock and roll. And the drummer did not play the Bonham intro. He played something that he thought resembled it, but it wasn't it. And I'm sorry. You know, you can't do that. It's like you can't redo 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover. You got to play that.
Right, that's a good example.
You know, I mean, there's certain things that are so iconic, you know, that you just can't mess with them.
That Bonham intro, I heard, somebody told me or I read somewhere where that's actually the Johnny B. Good
it's the
guitar
intro to
thing.
Johnny B.
Yeah.
Good.
Oh, it is.
And so many people think that the whole thing starts on
One. It actually starts on the end of 3.
It's on the end of 3.
Right.
And once you listen to, see, that's the thing. When you listen to somebody's influences, if you love John Bonham, you need to go back and listen to who he listened to get John Bonham.
Right.
And that's a perfect example. Perfect example of saying, oh, this is where he got it from. There's a guy named Daniel Glass who does a podcast on I forget the drum thing. He did, it's on his website, a clip from where Bonham got it from and then Bonham's intro. He takes them both back to back and says, here's where he got it from. And then he counts it 1, 2, 3, and then he puts Bonham's intro in the spot.
In the right spot.
And it's genius.
I mean, I saw, speaking of writing, I mean, I saw one time, and I think it was in a drum magazine somewhere, somebody had written the intro out.
Yeah.
With starting on the first beat with the bar of 3/8 at the end.
Yeah.
I was like, really?
Well, supposedly, too, on Led Zeppelin 4,
Wow.
those symbols on Led Zeppelin 4, rumor has it Bonham symbol's the symbol for Ballantine beer, his favorite beer.
That could be.
And I always heard that
there
there was like a Little Richard song rock and roll was sort of based on. I'm probably wrong. But I know Page, I guess, took the opening on Rain's song, the first 2 chords or something, because I guess George Harrison said, why don't you do a ballad, I think.
Oh, wow.
Well, Led Zeppelin borrowed heavily from a
the
lot
blues,
of
the blues.
Yeah.
Gee.
borrowed.
especially in the beginning.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
What was
Lemon
the
Song.
band that they were on tour with before they did Stairway to Heaven? That I forget what band it was.
I know they were sued for
Right,
it
they
too.
were
Spirit.
sued over the intro to Stairway to Heaven because
Spirit,
it was
I think it
almost
was.
directly
Pretty close.
copied from. I'm trying to think of the band.
Spirit.
Spirit. That's right. Spirit.
Yeah.
Yeah, they borrowed heavily. There was a YouTube clip of Plant directly stealing lines and melodies from somebody I can't remember on Led Zeppelin 2. They played the original and this, and it was note for note plagiarization.
Well, one of my things with Zeppelin went down a little bit when I first, because I got into the blues, and go, dude, he's trying to do Howlin' Wolf.
Yeah.
But that's what those guys listen to.
Yeah.
You Shook Me and all those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they were all
Lemon
listening to the same
Killing
stuff.
Floor was all
the big blues
ripped up.
bands. Same thing with the Stones.
Yeah.
They were, huge blues fans. That's what they wanted to be, a blues band. at the beginning.
Just,
Yeah, come on.
they eventually turned it into their own thing. I mean, after the first couple of Zeppelin albums of borrowing things from others, when you get to Zeppelin 3, they started on their own path. Of,
Right.
You know what I mean? So I guess everybody starts somewhere, But
Yeah, and things weren't quite so litigious. Is that the word? back in the 60s.
Well, yeah, but they finally had to. Didn't they have to change all the
credits.
credits
Yeah.
and copyright stuff?
Yeah.
And give credit.
Well, that's only fair.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're stealing from somebody or heavily borrowing, you at least got to give credit where credit's due.
Well, that's why, a great man once said, if you borrow from one person, it's plagiarism, but if you borrow from many people, it's research.
That's right.
Excellent.
Yeah. But on that, you guys have said that everybody has their own specific style. that you kind of more gravitate toward. What drummer outside of your style or a style you don't feel as comfortable playing are you like absolutely
we would be
amazed by?
surprised. You might be really, it's like, oh wow, this guy's sort of influence cool.
Yeah, it's like I don't know if I could play that style, but good God, this guy can rock. You know? So like if you're like, for maybe to kind of clarify it a little, if you guys are big blues fans, like what are some of the blues drummers that you don't play it?
I'll give you an example. I was downtown yesterday at the Rock the Fest thing, whatever they got going down by East Ave, and they had a police tribute band there. And I've been a huge police fan. Huge police fan ever since they came out, before MTV, when USA Night Flight used to play.
Oh, yeah. Remember when they used to dress like them? They used to have the police outfits.
But Stuart Copeland, to this day, is one of my favorite drummers, and you would never hear a note of his playing in my playing at all. You wouldn't have a clue. But he's one of my favorite drummers and has been for 40 years. I love the guy. I cannot play that way to save my life. Cannot.
That guy that was playing yesterday, Mark Annell, he's a really good drummer. He's in like 3 tribute bands.
Really?
Oh, really?
Yeah, he plays in a Tull band, a Yes band, and I guess apparently this band.
Huh.
Yeah, and I talk to him every now and then. Well, he started playing with Jerry Falzone, and I played on Jerry's previous CD. But yeah, he's a great player. But he's one of those guys. I just saw him a couple weeks ago, and I said, "Dude, you like amaze me. You have all these like electronic. He's got the pad with all the different. He's got reference tempo markings and this and that, and charts and different things on a pad." He goes, "Well, I have to do it because I'm in all these different things. I can't,
Gotta keep track.
especially if you're playing Yes and stuff like that. I mean, you got to have." But yeah, he's very good. But yeah, I couldn't. What's his name there? Copeland. Yeah, he introduced so much stuff to the repertoire.
Yeah.
And me, I've always been an Ian Pace fan, and
Deep Purple.
when he plays the way he plays rudimentally, is like his strokes, his single and double stroke. I mean, he's crazy. He's like so fast.
I always thought Bonham overshadowed him in the day. Everybody was so Bonham, and I always thought Pace was just a little bit left in the dust, just a little bit, because you know what I mean. Everybody thinks Bonham,
Right.
But Pace, I think in certain aspects, was a better drummer in some aspects.
Well, technically,
than Bonham.
yeah.
Technically, yeah.
If you listen to a lot of his stuff, when he if you go back and listen to Hush, the original Hush, during the keyboard solo, I think it is one of the solos. Listen to what he's actually doing, because he's displacing the beat. He's like ba dooka 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 ba ba dooka ba boopa doo. He's like swinging the crap out of it.
He really swings, man.
and he's not just playing a 2 and 4 boom whack thing. Right. He's playing this really cool thing.
Well, a lot of those guys grew up listening to jazz drummers because there wasn't any rock and roll when they were growing up.
Right.
So
same thing with Ginger Baker.
Yeah.
Same thing. All those guys.
John Densmore, all those guys. I mean,
I know Ginger's done jazz albums because I have a couple.
Yeah. I got one I think he did.
I was
back
actually
in
one
the
of the
90s
ones I
with
listened
Bill
to still is
Frisell.
the Book of
Great.
Kells and the Purple
yeah.
album, and I always listen to their version of We Can Work It Out.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
But I think Deep Purple comes from the song was the Blackmore's grandmother's song. She liked it was a jazz song, I think.
Huh.
That's where I think it comes. But the story about the police. I guess Keith Richards was saying one time. He said they're at a show in the early '80s, and one of his guys comes and goes, "Dude, the police are coming." So he said, "I gotta flush this out." So he goes, and then he comes down. He goes, he opens the door. It's Sting and Stuart Copeland.
Dave, what about you? You're who you like, but you
Oh gosh. Well, there's so many things I can't do. So there's so many people that I like. I like everybody. I mean, there's a lot of like heavier music that with all these incredible drummers. I could never do any of that stuff. I mean, I get called on to do a lot of different kinds of things because, like, even every year when we Primetime Funk, being the house band for the Rochester Music Hall of Fame, we have to back all these different artists. So you got to play in like all these different styles, But some of that stuff, I know I couldn't.
Well, that was. How did you think of? Because didn't you do? I know Rob, you're a big fan. Tommy Aldridge. Didn't you do Crazy Train? Did you play Crazy Train?
I did the obligatory vibra-slap solo on Crazy Train. I asked Carmine.
Carmine played it, didn't he?
Well, Carmine played the tune. He played the hell out of it. Yeah. It sounded great. But I asked them, do you guys have the vibra-slap? I said, no. I said, well, I got 2 of them. All right, well, you play. So I just sat down behind the drums and and kind of play the vibes. But you got to have that. But I always wondered. I thought it would be a great, Saturday Night Live skit.
Yeah.
If they're auditioning all of the other instruments and players before they got to the vibrer slap.
Yeah.
That'd be funny.
Didgeridoo, a triangle guy, whatever, and just little clips of
That'd
their
be funny.
audition. Oh, that's not it. And they finally came up with that.
You're
'Cause that song, you have to have that.
Yeah.
Your tone is perfect.
Yeah, right.
They should get the cast that did the cowbell skit and bring
Right.
them back.
Right.
God,
Yeah.
that'd be great.
Yeah.
Have you heard that so many times now? More cowbell.
Yeah. Oh, too much.
Too much.
Well, actually, on that, being drummers, what other, if any, percussion instruments do you guys play and are versed in?
Well, any other instruments. I think you played guitar. I know that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you still do. You did. In the day, you were really good.
Well, I play guitar. I went to college for music education, although I never finished it off because I
Where'd you
lost
go,
interest.
Rob?
Nazareth.
Okay.
Wow, I did too.
Did you?
Yeah, back 77 or so I graduated.
Okay. And I did go to the Eastman throughout high school. I took from Ruth Kahn and stuff. So I did learn some percussion, like your marimbas and your timpanis. And
Right.
when I got to college, I had to learn how to play piano and trumpet.
Yeah.
But it's been so many years, I couldn't tell you. I can't play that
We're in the
stuff.
same boat because I used to have a marimba. I had a concert grand, and I practiced on it a lot, but then I just never. When am I going to use this thing?
Well, that's it. I that's why I kind of got out of music education because I'm like, you know what? I just want to rock. I don't want to be a music teacher.
But it all helps. It all helps though. Your pitch is probably really good because I know I took voice lessons and stuff, and so I can sing, and
Yep.
that adds to your value and all that. So
Absolutely.
everything you pick up along the way.
But I tell you what,
Doesn't hurt.
Don't you get a look from somebody who you're playing with? Like, I'll sit there and tell a guitar player he's out of tune. Or
Right,
he's not
right.
playing something right. And then they look at you like, shut up, you're the dumb drummer.
I know. Well, we were talking about drummer jokes earlier.
Yeah, and that's the
so.
thing is, where does that come from a lot? Because none of you guys have choked on your own vomit while we're doing this or anything. Or drummers exploding.
Spontaneously
what do
combusted.
you name what's the drummer? It's the guy who hangs out with the band.
Nah,
Where does
I
it
don't know.
come from? Because
I'm
I
not
really
sure.
think it's literally, it's really such an important thing for a band to have that good system.
Well, it probably started because they probably figured, you're like cavemen, you just bang on shit, and you don't have to learn nothing, and it's like, okay, that's your view, but you don't realize what we're doing.
And I think for years people did not consider what a drummer does to be music.
Yeah.
It's you're making noise. Keep it down.
Just banging on
banging
stuff.
on.
Because
it.
isn't that the same thing? Like if you watch Spinal Tap, we had the one drummer and he choked on somebody's vomit. And our other drummer,
You
he just,
can't dust for vomit.
Yeah, right.
and we had another drummer, he just exploded.
But I think there's been a series of similar types of jokes about guitar players or trombone players or you name the instrument.
How many
I'm sure
guitar
there-
players does it take to screw in a light bulb? 1 to do it and 50 to say they could do it better.
Right, or
Right.
how do you get a guitar player to turn down?
Yeah.
Put sheet music in front of
Yeah.
them.
I'll tell you a story I had from the Nazareth years. Oh my God, this was so embarrassing. So I had at the time I had Ruth Kahn for like a year or so. She wasn't going to take me at first because I had nothing. I only had snare drum basically and some drum set. So, but she took me in because at the time I guess they wanted more guys to go there or whatever. So then when she left, we got this guy. I can't blank on his name now. The really famous marimbist does the Bach chorales. I'm sure I'll think of his name later.
Yeah,
I
on the
can't
way
think of
home.
I can't think of his name now, and I'm really sorry. But
Famous marimba
the
guy.
guy is astounding. Okay, so one time I was playing downtown with Vic Platty. I don't know. You remember Vic
Oh,
Platty?
of course.
Okay, so I'm in his band. We're playing these hokey tunes at the Holiday Inn downtown, and there's this percussion convention, and there's John Beck, and there's a couple other guys, and this teacher of mine, and I'm just sitting there going, "Oh my God, these guys are all going to think I suck." and it was just that whole thing. It was like really weird. Lee Howard Stevens.
There you
Oh,
go.
yeah,
See,
okay.
I have to bring it up
He was
because,
my
if
teacher.
I was a kid and I was going to take music, and I saw a certain movie, I would never take it. So anybody who's seen it, your views on Whiplash and that guy.
Oh, that was
didn't see it.
crazy.
Yeah.
I didn't see it.
I mean, Kyle
Well-
Bach, my good friend, he teaches at Nashville, and he said, you never get a guy like that. Especially, you imagine these days how fast that guy would get recorded.
Oh, it
You're
never
right.
happened. Never happened.
Yeah, it was a great performance by J.K. Simmons, but
yeah.
and he definitely deserved the Oscar. But in terms of a movie that represents what it's like to be at a music conservatory, it was
It's pretty extreme.
Well, it was funny because shortly after the movie came out, I sort of avoided seeing it for quite some time. But I got a call from a buddy of mine in California. He's a drummer. We went to the University of North Texas together to study with Ed Soph, and he said, "Oh man, didn't that remind you of our first day with Soph?" I said, "Man, I don't remember Ed throwing a chair at me. Did he throw a chair at you? And you were a lot better drummer than I was."
Now, are you playing faster or slower?
Yeah, right. And the other thing, which I was saying earlier before we started recording this, I said I've never seen a band director count a band in giving them 2 beats.
Yeah. Right.
You know, usually give them 2 bars, not 2 beats. I mean, you can't determine tempo really from just 2 beats like before.
I know Kyle Bach told me the story about in terms of what he does to the kid, in terms of how he screws him up on there. They said, okay, you get some people, we piss them off, they get pissed at us, but nobody would ever do that. No. Where he comes them on and they play something completely different.
Well, I can tell you one experience I had with Lee Howard Stevens.
Well, go on.
Lee Howard Stevens taught me a lot. I basically didn't have much. I didn't practice enough for this particular lesson, and I was trying to basically bluff my way through the marimba thing. And he, honest to God, he looks at me. He goes, "I'm not going to listen to this shit." Turns around and walks out.
Wow.
And so, guess who started practicing a hell of a lot more?
Yeah. One thing, any of you play the bongos?
What? Oh, yeah.
Bongos.
Bongos and congas and stuff like that.
Because I always have the famous story, I think you've heard it, where, talking about Deep Purple, Ian Gillan, that's his sort of this little security blanket, right? So when he's playing with Black Sabbath, I think if you read Tony Iommi's book, what they would do, they didn't do it here, but I guess what they would do, they would hook fishing wire up to his bongos. You go to play him and they yank him off stage.
Oh, man.
I remember that concert. I could never understand where bongos fit into Black Sabbath.
Remember, they did Smoke on the Water as an encore, too. Iommi there. It was Quiet Riot, because the big thing for me was Quiet Riot was opening for him.
Yeah, I remember that show.
Yeah,
well, that's probably like an interesting, like you were asking us about different influences. I mean, imagine being already have made a name for yourself and you get thrust into something that's not quite in your wheelhouse.
Yeah.
And you've got your own little ego and your own set of rules and your own, and those guys are expecting something of you, and it's the whole thing is a very trying experience for everybody, probably.
It depends. It is. It really depends on the person too, because like I sit back and I think, like you mentioned, there's guys that stick with what they know and they do one thing and they've always done it. Like you mentioned Tommy Aldridge. I love Tommy's playing. He's one of the best at what he does.
Right.
But he's not a Steve Smith. He's not a versatile drummer. Nobody can top him for what he does. You know what I mean? But then you take a guy like Steve Smith. You listen to Steve Smith in 1977.
Yeah.
Like I saw him in Journey in the Day, and I saw him in Journey a couple of years ago. I'm like, am I watching the same guy? He progressed so far.
He never stops learning and trying to improve, and
it's amazing.
Like then you get Peace and the thing. If you read his book, when did he have time to drum?
Well, you want to read a good raunchy rock and roll book.
Read that
book.
He's a great example of the musicality thing, because of like the "Don't Stop Believing." Everybody loves that song. It's all happy, joy, bouncy. But if you listen to his part, it's very specific with the bell and the thing, all the stuff that he's doing. Yeah.
I very rarely watch a guy play it and get it right.
Right.
Ever.
Yeah.
Ever. It's funny how it's actually, you're right, it's very composed. There's actually 4 different parts to the same idea.
And he's playing left-handed.
And he's playing left-handed
on the hi-hat the whole time.
And I tell you what, who's an MFer is Dean Castronovo's gone out with Neil Schon, and they have a project called Journey Through Time.
Oh, right.
Not only is he playing that,
he's
correct?
singing.
He's singing the song
Wow.
while he's playing.
I've seen
That's splitting your brain another way.
One thing that's always gotten me is
amazing.
watching, like, say, a Don Henley or somebody. How do you guys sing on the drums? It just seems like with your mouth.
I remember the first time I tried. It wasn't pretty.
I just can't see doing it.
You start focusing on the singing. It's like, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
But
eventually,
you get to the point that you can.
You got to practice that.
I constantly do.
Yeah.
Like if I'm singing backup parts, I have
do
to
they
practice.
have you sing backup and all? They shut you off.
Not slowing down or stuff like that. Yeah.
Everybody else sang in the band. So
I just think, I sort of see it like a chart almost. You sort of see your drum part here, and there's your vocal here, and you kind of see where the things line up, and it's weird. It's like a very kind of weird.
Yeah. Where it gets tricky is if you're playing one rhythm and you're singing a completely
Right.
different phrasing, or you have to hold one note a little longer one time. You know,
You really
so
have to know.
It's definitely challenging. And of course, it's crazy.
It's bad enough we got 4 limbs going in 2
I know.
four different directions.
Yeah, how many balls do you need in the air at one time?
It's hard to explain how
what
it
it's
gets
like.
done.
I know. I'm always amazed, though. I'm just amazed.
It's just you're able to separate because we're strange.
Well, I was gonna ask, I'm actually surprised because, again, as a non-musician, but I'll go online on Stalker Book and have my friends have these big debates who are musicians. And one of the persons that seems to divide people a little, they really like him or don't like him, is Neil Peart. What are your thoughts?
Neil Peart?
It's Peart.
Peart?
He gets mad about it. He's like, nobody pronounces
sorry.
it. It's
Well,
like the shampoo.
He doesn't get mad about it. He's Canadian.
They always say sorry.
I'm sorry, but that's not my name, eh?
Take it south, eh?
Love you, Canada.
Well, I don't know. I think he's amazing. Sometimes I would just like to hear a Rush song that had an actual, like when they did Moving Pictures, that was probably one of my favorite albums, and Permanent Waves. Those couple of albums where it wasn't just all over the place.
They
It
stripped
was
it
a
down.
little more song form, and the keys got lower and stuff like that. And it just sounded a little more. It was more radio friendly, obviously, but I liked that. But listening to his stuff, I just marvel at it. I couldn't play like that.
I couldn't do that stuff. I mean, people assume that because you're a drummer, you're necessarily familiar with that catalog, and I didn't grow up on that. That wasn't my inspiration. I sort of it was a generation before that, and came back to it later in order to appreciate it. But let alone his drumming, but he wrote all the lyrics too. So you got to give it up to the guy, and the fact that he would tackle trying to play with the Buddy Rich big band.
And what he did too is, I guess,
Right.
he
Right
changed
out of his
style.
way out of his wheelhouse.
He changed his style, I guess, like in mid-career. He decided he learned to get
He
it.
studied with Freddie Gruber, just
Gruber.
like Steve Smith did, and changed a lot of his technical approach.
I can
to
actually
the
say
instrument.
I saw their show, the Moving Pictures, the time warp show, the thing like 30 years. It was at the fairgrounds, like 2010.
I saw that.
And
show.
I would say that was one of the best drum solos I ever saw.
Well, he is a master at making a drum solo a composition.
Right.
You know what I mean?
It's not just a boring get a beer thing.
Exactly. I mean, and I give him credit too because he embraced technology as it grew through time. So he started incorporating different sounds and different stuff, and in the 80s they went a little overboard, I think, with some of that stuff.
Well, you know the story about Yes. I guess Rick Wakeman said he wore that cloak because when they did the drum solo, he would get curried. He would eat. He just put the cloak over his head at the keyboard. But they had the ones where I remember in the day back, like Bonham would do a half hour. Some of these guys would do like half-hour solos and stuff.
Crazy. Now you can't get away with that. The attention span is so short today.
But what I saw Neil do too, Zach was going to ask you. You guys ever play with you've heard this? You guys play with the brushes ever?
Well, I do all
Yeah.
the time.
You do,
I just
yeah.
did the other night. Yeah.
I suck at brushes.
Well, it's one of those things that, you have to practice it.
I need to take lessons from you.
The cool thing about
You really need them.
Brush
for, like, you
101.
play.
I don't use brushes for anything I play, but I bought a pair one before I got my Regal Tip endorsement. Joe Testa from Vic Firth hooked me up with some stuff because he's a hometown Rochester guy, and I ordered a pair of Steve Gadd brushes, and I got to have a pair of brushes, and so I have a pair of brushes. And there they sit.
You gotta hook up with him. He'll teach you a little bit.
We'll get together sometime.
Yeah.
We'll stir the pot a little bit.
I had a really good book that taught me that. It was like an old swing drum. No, there was a Louis Belson book.
Okay. Because I had the Philly Joe Jones brush book.
And, they had the figure 8 and all that stuff. I mean, I kind of play it the opposite. A lot of people, whether you swish with the
Well, that's
right,
the thing. It's a
depends,
very individual art to it.
Yeah.
I mean, I was fortunate a few years back to tech for Steve Gadd on a couple of recording sessions. Just got to sit behind him while he played a lot of brushes,
nice.
and it's like, what a lesson there.
Yeah.
Watch him, but it's like watching a painter.
Yeah.
But
That's
everybody has a different approach. There was a great DVD set that Steve Smith and I think Adam Nussbaum put out a few years back on Hudson, The Art of Playing Brushes. And what they did was they took like 6 different drummers, jazz drummers and had them all play to the same tunes at various tempos and showed, in their, so there were some similarities. Some guys had the brushes really way spread out. Other guys had them very narrow. Some guys circled to the left, some guys circled to the but everybody had their own unique style.
What I would have done, if I was on that, they'd be playing, I'd be painting the wall with the brushes.
Right.
And one thing I was going to ask, all of you have played for quite a while. You're all young bucks here and everything. I remember Rob in high school. How could I forget all you guys? And the thing I was going to ask you, okay, is you've done this. What do you have to say about the evolution of technology in terms of the music and stuff? Is it, help? Does it hinder? Does it, all the drum stuff now? It's amazing.
I think if you're playing like club music or whatever, and you buy a couple of, like I have a friend who bought one of these rolling things. It's like a clap noise thingy. So then you got to have, it's cool because you can. It's got a pitch thing and a speed thing, so you get a, or you can get the tight clap. But then you got to have a speaker. Then you got to, as you get more stuff, then you got to have more stuff to reproduce.
Depending on the gig, I mean, if you're doing stuff that, especially stuff that's popular stuff that's recorded today that uses all of that stuff, then you need those tools if that you're trying to recreate those sounds in a live situation.
Yeah.
Or I see a lot of people now. They have the Octapad thing or something.
But
it's all programmed.
But also in terms of how it's affected, recording. It used to be we'd all be in the same room like a band tracking.
Now it's just files.
Now we still do stuff like that occasionally, but it's not the norm anymore.
Now you're sending files.
Unless you're in L.A. and working on film scores or sessions out there or in New York. Most of it's like an assembly line.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing.
It's true.
Take a perfect example. I heard somebody, forget the producer, might have been Max Norman was talking about this in an interview I was listening to, and somebody was telling him about the first two Ozzy records that he produced, and you guys probably know this, maybe you don't. About 10, 15 years ago, Sharon Osbourne, out of spite, went in and had Ozzy's current band, the drummer and the bass player, go in and re-record those
Blizzard
tracks.
of Oz. I had one of those.
Yeah, Blizzard and Diary re-record the bass and the drums. And
why?
Well, out of spite, because they were in legal battles. They didn't want to pay Daisley and Curtis Lake the royalties. So they said, F you, we're going to go in and take you off those records.
Yeah.
So what happens is you end up with two stale, completely different sounding records. And when I listen to Max Norman talk about it, he's like, here's what's the problem with that. At the time they recorded that stuff, you had a bass player interacting with the drummer, interacting with the guitar player, and everybody fed off of everybody else. Right. Now you take two new guys, bring them into the mix who are listening to somebody, but there's no feedback coming the other way.
Same room, right?
And it's not the same thing.
I always wondered why that happened, and now you explained it. I never knew that. I said, I'll buy it. I'll check it out.
Well, didn't that happen with some of Foreigner's stuff at one point?
What?
Well, not replacing the drums, but wasn't some stuff that they took Lou off of and put, what's the new singer's name? Kelly?
Well, they did go back like a lot of bands and re-recorded some of the old songs, which is kind of the norm about 6-7 years ago. A lot of bands, because they didn't have the original license, the original recordings, went back and re-recorded stuff, so they own the rights and could sell that.
They did a hits album with the new band.
Journey did the same thing. A lot of bands have done that. Def Leppard went in and recreated note for note exactly the original stuff. They did like 3 songs. You can't tell the difference. But they did that because they weren't making any money off licensing the original shit because they didn't own it.
I see. Okay.
So a lot of bands did that. But as far as technology goes, there's pros and cons. Let's take. I always talk to people about. Like when we grew up, there was no YouTube, so you had to sit there and listen and learn it, and it developed your ear.
Right.
And even if you didn't get it 100%, you got it your way, which is good because you're doing your thing.
And if you're lucky enough to see that act live, and then you could go, that's how he's doing
it. If they were on TV or something.
Or they're on TV, or exactly.
But now anybody can turn on YouTube. Get a guy playing it. A lot of guys still get it wrong just because they're on YouTube. Don't make it right.
Exactly.
But it's good if you're in a crunch. Like if you got to learn a song in 2 days, it's good to just watch some guy do it and get it down than to spend 3 days trying to learn it. You know, so it has its pluses, but I think too many people rely on watching some dude on YouTube and not developing their own creativity in their own ear, which to me is more critical than just doing something out of rote. You know what I mean?
I like to watch YouTube things and then go hit the set and then just, I don't have it near me. I think I understand what he's talking about. goof around with it.
Yeah.
And then you come up with something a little off, but it's yours.
It's yours.
But it's based on that thing you like.
Yeah, it's great for inspiration. And I'm not. Everything has its own purpose and its own thing. I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying, when we grew up, we had to listen to it. We had to develop our own ear.
Right. In developing the art of listening, which is something I think that's kind of
People don't
lost
do.
today. As soon as you really have to listen.
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't mean you put the music on and then you're on your phone.
Right.
It means you close the door to your room, you listen.
Yep.
You know,
I was
and
gonna-
it's,
Right.
it's
And I was
difficult
going to
for
ask
them.
too, in terms of equipment, do you have a preference for type? And what was your first kit you guys had?
I had a Rogers 3-piece, black diamond, with lights in them. I don't know where some guy saw them. They had light bulbs.
Oh,
They had actual light sockets screwed into them.
wow.
That's awesome.
I think mine was a Burgundy Sparkle round badge Gretsch.
Wow.
Nice.
Mine
Which I
was.
unfortunately don't have.
Yeah, right. I know.
Mine
None
was
of us.
a minimal Ludwig Ringo kind of colored. I don't know what you call it. 1960.
Oyster.
Yeah. 1966 was the date stamped in the shells. There's no
Wow.
serial numbers or nothing.
Uh-huh.
So I couldn't tell you what Ludwigs they were.
Yeah.
But
That's cool though. That's all. Did they have the white interior? You think? Remember?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's about right.
I still have them.
Yeah, those are sweet.
Yeah.
Worth some money.
Yeah.
You know, there's this guy. I go to that Webster music store a lot. I know, Dave. You have like a shop that you work out of. But this guy, somebody bought some Gretsch set over there, and because I went in there, and there was this red sparkle Ludwig, pretty nice, like a 67 maybe, and some other used drums. This guy doesn't have used drums very much. I said, where'd you get all these used drums? And the girl goes, well, remember the red Gretsch kit that was up front? I said, well, not really, but she goes, well, anyway, the guy wanted it. He brought in these 3 drum sets. So he brought in 3 drum sets to get one.
3 for 1.
Yeah, but they're pretty cool. But this Ludwig set's really sweet looking.
Do you ever have anybody out there like you watch some drummer and you go, "Damn, that's a really cool set they play," or "This is nuts." It's so much.
Wow.
There's so many
There's so
custom
many guys.
I
drum
know, but
houses
anybody,
now,
for
so you can-
example, like you ever see?
Well, you see some crazy stuff where you
Terry
you need a
Bozzio.
building
Yeah.
permit to
Yeah.
set up
Terry
your
Bozzio.
drums. Well, yeah, that's like the SS Titanic.
Did you bring your socket
You don't
set
want
to
to be
put it
his
up?
drum tech.
I would. Yeah, I was just gonna say that.
Yeah. But he uses all of it.
Well, yeah.
It's very specific. I mean, it's not,
Well, I'll tell you what. There's a guy. Sorry to interrupt. There's a guy. I'm friends with him on Facebook. He'll never hear this, but I still won't say his name. This guy, I can tell. I don't really.
It's not
know
about
him.
you if you think it's about you.
It's just real funny. I don't know the guy. He's just friends with him, and he sends me stuff all the time. Seems to be a guy with a lot of extra money. So he's got the Neil Peart setup down to a T, right? And it's all on a rack, and he wheels it. And this guy, he's a reasonable drummer. But here's the clincher.
Some extra money.
Here's the clincher. You're going to die. And I always wanted to ask him, but I didn't want to embarrass him. He wheels this thing out in an AC/DC tribute band.
Right.
He plays in an AC/DC tribute band with a
a
Neil
Rush-
Peart drum setup.
That makes zero
Which brings
sense.
me to another point. When you audition, understand what the heck you're auditioning for.
Right.
I've heard stories of these guys. They'll bring down double kick sets and they're auditioning for like a pop
blues
band or a
gig or-
blue or a country band or something. It's like, do you even understand what this music requires?
Well, that's
and
that's
it's
the
like
nature
what?
of those cattle call type
Yeah.
of auditions.
But
you know.
that's hilarious. That is funny.
Dude, I want to die. He's got a light up thing around it, the big gong drum over his head like Vinny Appice used to have. And I'm like, for an AC/DC band? Are
AC/DC
you
band?
kidding me? You can
I
leave
mean-
all of that at home.
If he looked at the basic AC/DC setup, it's pretty simple. 2 floor toms and a rack.
You don't
and-
even need a ride cymbal.
Yeah, right. How often does he play the right?
I don't know. It just blows my mind. But
Yeah, well,
Well, no, there's a guy, AC/DC, that the original drummer there,
I Blake you too.
the murder dude,
What's his name? Phil.
Phil
Rudd.
yeah.
Phil Rudd.
Phil Rudd. And I mean, you listen to, he's got some. I mean, he does what I call a limited palette of colors. If you were painting, you're using 4 colors.
Right.
He's got his basic flam stuff. He's got like little tom fills, but everything's kind of rhythmic and cool. But it's not at all busy or.
no.
Oh,
But yet you try to copy it, and
Yeah.
it's tricky.
So many guys cannot get the feel of AC/DC.
Yeah.
And when they had Chris Slade in the band, who's been in and out over the
Yeah.
years, it's a different band when
It
he's
is.
drumming.
And I like the way he plays.
Yeah,
but
Chris, you're a great drummer, but
It goes back to musical identity and
Yeah.
feel.
Yeah.
How much more basic can you get than AC/DC? Yet I have so many people have a hard time
Right.
recreating
Well,
his feel.
Well,
Right.
because people assume, oh, it's easy.
Right.
But it's not. It may be quote unquote simple.
Right.
Right.
In terms of it's not complex.
Yep.
Not a lot of notes. That doesn't make it easy to
Gotta be
play.
done right.
Because we spend all this time, you spend all this time practicing all these cool licks and fills and all this stuff, and then, sometimes you can't crowbar that stuff in where it doesn't belong.
What's the
Right.
saying? It's
It
more
takes
about
discipline.
It's not about what
Right.
you play; it's what you don't play.
Right.
Leaving space.
And for all I know, that guy could be the most amazing jazz drummer in the universe.
Right.
Yeah.
I would never know it listening to AC/DC,
Right.
but he could
right.
be.
I've watched a lot of his live. I buy a lot of those live ones because I like just watching them. But the way he plays, seeing guys smoking at the same time half the time.
Bunny
And it's like-
Carlos.
yeah. And it's like, well, he's another one, man. He's
Feel.
got an interesting style.
I always thought I always watch him though and goes, this guy choking when he's playing. He got the
I got this one album. I don't even finish what I was saying. So, but you watch he's like doing these breathing things, and he's like kind of just, he's just there, man. He's just boom, boom, ga, 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 he's very metric. I mean, he's just a very metric drummer.
Yeah.
But and I don't know how he starts out some of these songs. It's just like, it's like you said, the 2-beat thing. It's just he'll boop bop and they're off. It's like,
Would you want to see what the album? You got one album?
Cheap Trick. Or
oh,
something?
the Cheap Trick. Yeah, it's called Music for Hangovers.
Oh, I got that.
Yeah. And you listen to the one recording of the first couple songs, the snare drum is like so ringy. It's a great sounding snare, but it's just like when he does I Want You to Want Me or whatever it is. And it's like, crank, it's just like this beautiful sound. Because, whoever engineered it, they didn't bother, putting a bunch of tape on it or something.
Yeah.
Because it's recorded over 2 or 3 days, so the sound changes a little bit. But yeah, it's a really cool.
Well, he's an interesting guy. Talk about feel. And the funny thing is that guy's, from what I understand, he's naturally left-handed.
I was wondering about that because he would change. Like some years you see him playing this way, and other times you see the set the other way. And
Oh, I didn't know that. That's
But there's a
interesting.
guy who so many people, most of the people don't get him right either. They'd sit up there and play, do, ba, do, you know what I mean? That guy, if you watch him play, it's sort of like listening to Bonham play rock and roll. It's a lot of with both hands. Like he's riding on the snare drum more than he's riding on the hi-hat.
Right.
Because he's left-handed.
Ah.
And he's got such a feel. He's not a complicated drummer at all.
But he swings, man.
Master of swing.
Adaptation creates a different style when you have to adapt yourself.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But this has been really interesting. And
Yeah, you guys
fun,
want to come back and do another one?
Yeah, and I'll get here on time, maybe.
No,
the hospital.
Wait, no, it wasn't. Okay, you can say all you want. We know we were going to talk about that band, and Bauman and Dave tried to kidnap you.
Oh, is that what you were going to come up with?
Yeah, that's what we were going with.
All right, yeah, we'll go with that.
But if you want to do as we always do, but you want to just, what's going on with you guys lately? You want to start with you, Greg, and go down the line for it's
Plug
plugs. What are you
time.
doing? What are you doing? What are you doing soon? Come see you.
Yeah, like I would mention, I got an Iron Smoke gig coming up August 2nd with the Brian Lindsay Band, and August 30th at the Three Head Brewery with Susie Willpower, Anonymous Willpower.
Probably not the 38th. I think you said 38th.
The 30th.
The 38th of Smarch.
If you can find these
I haven't had
online.
anything to eat yet. I'm sorry, my blood sugar's starting to fade.
Oh, yeah,
you know.
there's that too.
What do you got, Dave? Coming up with Friday?
Let's see.
And I got to say, see Primetime Funk, they're really cool. They're doing a great show.
band.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, we're playing. We just played the other night at Anthology for something, but I'm just checking my calendar now. We're playing in Parrington at the outdoor amphitheater there on Sunday the 25th, and I also play with a 5-piece band called Soul Passenger with
they're great.
Ethan Porter, Mark Terranova, Tyler Norton from Download, and we
That's
just
a good
added a
band.
keyboard
That
player,
singer's
my
great.
old pal Casey Filiacci from Backseat Sally.
So real quick, I had a question I asked him earlier. Did you ever have any bad gig dreams?
I've lived bad. But a dream. I can't think of a dream.
Like where something didn't work or you forgot something? I had one just last night for some reason. I was thinking about this thing and my freaking brain was going over it. I was like, I don't know. I couldn't find anything and I went to the wrong place or something. I don't know. Some kind of weird thing. But
And then
okay.
I showed up to the
Well,
gig
Neil
and realized
Peart,
I
in
wasn't
one of his
wearing any
books, he said
pants.
he had diarrhea and he had to keep a bucket behind him.
Oh my God.
And on that note,
What's going on
lovely
in the
note
world
to
of
end
Rob?
on.
I gotta tell you a funny. Hang on
Oh,
a
it's
second.
fine, no problem.
I gotta tell you a funny story. Like this has happened a couple times. I'll make it quick. So, but talk about an embarrassing moment, and I'll try to get to it real quick as possible. So, I played to a click track with Lou, and some of the keyboard parts and some stuff was on a computer, right, for enhancements. So we're outdoors. I think it was last year, 2 years ago. It doesn't matter. We're in Chicago, 100 degrees outside. So I didn't start the click track. It was always the keyboard player that would start the click track. So we're about to play Midnight Blue. Midnight Blue's about like this. All right, so what happens is I get 4 clicks, and then I click 4 for the band, as probably everybody does. So all of a sudden, he starts the next song. I don't know what the hell happened with the computer. It was so freaking hot. Instead of going, I get...
Oh, no.
It's like
And I'm like,
halftime.
I'm looking down at my set list going, holy shit, what song are we on?
Right.
All I can do at that point is you go with it and you click along with what you got. I just do 1, 2, 3, 4, crash,
Yeah.
and then figure out where everybody goes from there, right?
Wow.
The crash buys you a second.
Yeah.
So everybody starts playing, I don't know what it was, and Lou's turning around at me going, Rob. And the clincher is some guy in the audience filmed it, put it up on YouTube.
Oh, no.
And so I see it on Facebook or whatever the next day, and you could hear Lou through the microphone, who you would think, no offense, Lou, you don't shout out people's mistakes on stage in front of a microphone.
Somebody out on
Okay.
stage, man.
And you hear him going, Rob, Midnight Blue, or whatever it was. And I'm like, and it's all over. I'm like,
damn.
And it wasn't my fault.
Of course.
I had to go with what I had.
know.
Drummers, we always get
Well,
blamed.
there's
for
the
everything.
pro and con of technology.
Oh, man. Terrible.
You didn't have to hire 10 extra guys, but the one
What's
thing
going
might
on
not
with you
work.
now lately?
Well, after that, I nothing. No. Actually, I've been just jamming with Tyler. Actually,
Oh, have you?
Tyler, me, Don Torpy, and Kiri got a fun little band going on that we'll be playing in October. And
We'll promote it here. You want to bring it down?
we don't have a name or anything like that, but it's some groovy stuff. Some well, I won't even say. I'll leave it up to later. But it's some bluesy kind of groovy.
Stay
some
tuned for
heavy
that
stuff.
episode.
see, there you go.
And
Nice.
I've been in contact with a lot of the people I've met along the road with Lou, and maybe something is a sub gig for somebody, but I'm not going to say who it is because it may not pan out. But if it does, it'll be cool.
I hope it does.
And,
That's always fun.
Yeah, I've been offered some things to do. I had a chance to go to Europe and play some things and some festivals in the spring, but it let's just say the money wasn't there. So
And you have a YouTube channel, don't you?
yeah, I got a
Can everybody
YouTube
find
channel.
it? Does it have that video on it?
What
The
video?
Midnight
Oh,
Blue.
yeah, like I'm gonna put that in. Although I do have some blooper videos on Facebook and YouTube. You can watch me.
And how
lose
can
my
we
shit.
find you on there? Because
It's under my name. It's under my
Rob
name.
Mount.
I got my own website and just look me up on the.
And we're going to actually play something from you.
I have
And
a.
Can you introduce it and we'll end the show with that? Thanks, you guys.
Sure, no problem.
We'll see you again for part 2.
You can introduce it and we'll go out with that and have a good one.
Well, I was gonna bring some stuff we did with Lou, but I thought maybe that might not be cool. So I.
Oh, they'll always get us no matter what we do, so it doesn't matter.
We'll get stricken for it anyways.
Well, there's a record I did in the mid-'90s that came out in Japan that John Hahn from the band Harpo, who was big around here many years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Me and him were mutual friends, and he called me last minute to record a record. He originally programmed with a drum machine, but the record company said, we want a real drummer on this. And so another one of those last minute, in a week's ahead of time.
Where can we find one?
Yeah. So I went down there and recorded the entire record in 2 days, and so this is actually some good stuff. It's kind of, it came out in the mid '90s, and it's more kind of late '80s, early '90s kind of commercial hard rock metal.
Do you have a
That's
song?
cool. I like that.
Yeah,
song.
so it didn't fit in at the
That's one of my
time it
favorite
came
They'll
out.
give us the song here, too. This is-
White Snake and shit like that. I like
So, but you know, the number 7, track 7, "Eye of the Storm's" a good tune.
Okay, we'll do that
So
one then.
you can play that if you want.
Okay, Rob Mountain, I have the storm, and thanks everybody. And
Thank
now
you.
we'll drum off to another episode. See ya.
it.